Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Lois Lerner, and I'm the Director of Exempt Organizations at the Internal Revenue Service. I have been a government employee for over 34 years. I initially practiced law at the Department of Justice and later at the Federal Election Commission. In 2001, I moved to the IRS to work in the Exempt Organizations Office. And in 2006, I was promoted to be the director of that office. Exempt Organizations oversees about 1.6 million tax-exempt organizations and processes over 60,000 applications for tax exemption every year. As director, I'm responsible for about 900 employees nationwide and administer a budget of almost $100 million. My professional career has been devoted to fulfilling responsibilities of the agencies for which I have worked, and I am very proud of the work that I have done in government. On May 14th, the Treasury Inspector General released a report finding that the Exempt Organizations Field Office in Cincinnati, Ohio, used inappropriate criteria to identify for further review applications from organizations that plan to engage in political activity, which may mean that they did not qualify for tax exemption. On that same day, the Department of Justice launched an investigation into the matters described in the Inspector General's report. In addition, members of this committee have accused me of providing false information when I responded to questions about the IRS processing of applications for tax exemption. I have not done anything wrong. I have not broken any laws. I have not violated any IRS rules or regulations, and I have not provided false information to this or any other congressional committee. And while I would very much like to answer the committee's questions today, I've been advised by my counsel to assert my constitutional right not to testify or answer questions related to the subject matter of this hearing. After very careful consideration, I have decided to follow my counsel's advice and not testify or answer any of the questions today. Because I'm asserting my right not to testify, I know that some people will assume that I've done something wrong. I have not. One of the basic functions of the Fifth Amendment is to protect innocent individuals, and that is the protection I'm invoking today. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Ms. Lerner, earlier the ranking member made me aware of a response we have that is purported to come from you in regards to questions that the IG asked during his investigation. Can we have you authenticate simply the questions and answers previously given to the Inspector General?
I don't know what that is. I'd have to look at it.
Okay. Would you please make it available to the witness?
This appears to be my response.
So it's your testimony that, as far as your recollection, that is your response?
That's correct.
Ms. Lerner, the topic of today's hearing is the IRS improper targeting of certain groups for additional scrutiny regarding their application for tax-exempt status. As Director of Exempt Organizations of the Tax-Exempt and Government Entities Division of the IRS, you are uniquely positioned to provide testimony to help this committee better understand how and why the IRS targeted these groups. To that end, I must ask you to reconsider, particularly in light of the fact that you have given not once but twice testimony before this committee under oath this morning. You have made an opening statement in which you made assertions of your innocence, assertions you did nothing wrong, assertions you broke no laws or rules. Additionally, you have authenticated earlier answers to the IG. At this point, I believe you have not asserted your rights, but in fact have effectively waived your rights. Would you please seek counsel for further guidance on this matter while we wait?
I will not answer any questions or testify about the subject matter of this committee's meeting.
We will take your refusal as a refusal to testify. The witness and counsel are dismissed. The gentleman will state a point of order. Please wait.
Mr. Issa, Mr. Cummings just said we should run this like a courtroom, and I agree with him. She just testified. She just waived her Fifth Amendment right to privilege. You don't get to tell your side of the story and then not be subjected to cross-examination. That's not the way it works. She waived her right to Fifth Amendment privilege by issuing an opening statement. She ought to stand here and answer our questions.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Cummings.
First of all, with all respect for my good friend, Mr. Gowdy, I said I'd like to see it run like a Federal court. Unfortunately, this is not a Federal court, and she does have a right, and I think, and we have to adhere to that.
Thank you. We'll pause for a moment. Ms. Lerner, I'll ask you just a couple of additional questions. Is it possible that we could narrow the scope of questions and that there are some areas that you would be able to answer any questions on here today?
I will not answer any questions or testify today.
Ms. Lerner, would you be willing to answer questions specifically related to the earlier statements made under oath before this committee?
I decline to answer that question for the reasons I've already given.
For this reason, I have no choice but to excuse the witness, subject to recall after we seek specific counsel on the questions of whether or not the constitutional right of the Fifth Amendment has been properly waived. Notwithstanding that, and consultation with the Department of Justice as to whether or not limited or use immunity could be negotiated, the witness and counsel are dismissed. The clerk will please rearrange the seating. For all the members on both sides of the dais, I think it's important that we take a moment, both I think I speak for Mr. Cummings and myself. This is a committee that is investigating more than anything else the ultimate right of free speech and the First Amendment. So as we go on with the rest of this hearing, I would admonish all of us to remember that it's not the First Amendment or the Second Amendment or the Fifth Amendment or the 10th Amendment in a vacuum. We have to respect them all. The gentlelady who has departed was entitled to assert her Fifth Amendment. Although there are some questions about how it was done, there can be no question that we have to respect it. Additionally, that her assertion is not to be viewed or used during this hearing to make any determination plus or minus as to actions that were taken. We have the Inspector General with us today. We have other fact witnesses. And this committee has more than 10 additional witnesses that will be called either to hearings or to interviews already on the schedule. I believe that this committee has a long history of very few during my tenure of 12 years of these occasions, and we should not use this either for political gain or for any indication that it is anything other than somebody's right. It is the committee's work to find out what went terribly wrong. I'll take one liberty mentioning Mr. Cummings' earlier statement. At this point, this committee is not investigating wrongdoing for political purposes by high-ranking individuals in or out of this government. We are investigating something which has now been entered as fact, that wrongdoing occurred, and occurred over a group, and that group happened to be key-worded things that are generally called conservative. In my research on this, and I think Mr. Cummings would agree, this is not new to government. This has happened before, and it has not always been conservative groups. So as we go through this, I would ask all of us to avoid talking about who was liked by President Bush, who was liked by President Obama, who is liked by Republicans or Democrats. Let's all be Republicrats and Democrats today. Mr. Cummings.
Mr. Chairman, first of all, I appreciate you saying what you just said, and I agree with what you just said, and I would associate myself with your words.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you. What purpose does the gentleman seek recognition?
Gentleman, you'll just for 1 minute?
A fraction thereof.
Okay. I just want to say the same. I appreciate what the Chairman said. I think he's right on target, but the irony is inescapable. Ms. Lerner gets to exercise her constitutional rights, but she won't stay here and answer questions about the constitutional rights of thousands of Americans who were denied by their actions.
I thank the gentleman. It is this committee's goal to get to the truth. If we have to go circuitous routes, we will eventually get there. The dots will be connected. With that, Mr. Woolen, would you move over? It will be less distracting, and we'll remove the other chair. Actually, I'll take note of the gentlelady's opening statement. She made it very obvious with 90,000 IRS individuals, 900 working for her, and more or less 9 out of 900 involved in this, or maybe slightly more. We're talking about a fraction of 1% of the IRS, and I join with the gentleman in recognizing that this is not to disparage the men and women of the IRS. Mr. Woolen, you're recognized for 5 minutes.